Hi guys, Frost Shino here, and we're doing the same boring thing that everybody else did so far. Aha, gotcha, that's actually me, Chavsberry. And when we're talking about picks, usually everybody does the exact same. But Chavsberry, I wanna approach the picking guide at a slightly different angle. Did you happen to get into the situation where you know that you should get a flanker but you don't know which one? Do I get Andro or Zin? Eevee? Lex? Which one is better in this particular situation? If you weren't thinking about that, then don't worry, Papa Chavs was thinking about that for you. Now, I got that theory. It's just my theory, it's not something that the devs consider when balancing a champion, but still it's pretty accurate most of the time. When the devs create a champion, they tend to give him a particular kit with upsides and downsides that depend on each other. And because of that, a lot of champions kits are made for the same job. There is no champion in the game that has a super high mobility and a high DPS and a weapon with no fall-off, and a large magazine and a hit scan. He usually gets just a few or even just one of those upsides. So considering that, we can split champions in a few different groups. And champions from one group can have an advantage over champions from another group, because their strength helps exploiting the other group's weaknesses. It's not about hard countering, it's about creating a favorable matchup. Now, this is my scheme, what counters what. The reds are the damage, the purples are the flanks. Now, what in the hell is all that mean? Let's start with the Sluggers. Those are the champions that have a slow fire rate, but every shot deals some massive damage. That's of course snipers, blasters, Shaolin, etc. These champions like being farther away from their targets. That's because they don't have any damage fall-off, so they can deal massive damage at any distance. And that means that getting close to enemies is an unnecessary risk for them. On top of that, they like being next to some kind of cover. If they can peek, shoot and hide again, they can completely neutralize any threat to them while still getting value from their weapon shots. So the champions that can exploit their weaknesses, I call them the rushdown flanks. These champions have an absurd amount of mobility. So Androxus, Eevee and Maeve. Yep, just them so far. I'm not talking about just usual mobility and not even some vertical mobility, I'm talking about something that allows you to take routes that other champions can't, flanking from places that are simply unreachable for most champions, and doing it fast. So while Buck has a jump, it's not quite as versatile or fast, and doesn't allow you to jump on top of some buildings as reliable as Eevee or Andro. And Koga, while having a lot of mobility in combat, outside of it, all he can do is just climbing walls. So now, why do rushdown flanks counter Sluggers? As I said, they are exploiting their weaknesses. It's usually much harder for Sluggers to fight at a close range, so getting into that close range is the priority. And while flanks with low mobility can get shot while approaching from obvious routes and be forced to retreat, rushdown flanks have a better chance avoiding dangerous lines of sight until getting close enough. Sluggers also have a disadvantage at a close range because every missed shot opens them up and a flanker gets an opportunity to take them down. And at a close range, there is no way to hide behind any cover anymore. So if you can't run and can't hide, and Andro is already breathing into your ear, you're about to get dropped no matter how much damage your shot can deal. Now, the damage champions of course have a way to deal with this kind of flankers, outside of just hitting every snipe shot at a point blank range. That's where the rapid fire damage champions come in. That's the characters that have a high and consistent DPS with large magazine. So champions like Victor, Tyra and yes, Vivian. They of course like cover too, but if somebody comes too close and doesn't allow them to use cover, it's not as big of a deal for them. Their insanely high DPS is not very easy to beat, even if you get close. On top of that, if Shaolin misses a shot, he'll need to spend one more second to load another arrow, while if Vivian misses a shot, she won't even notice that. So while trying to deal with the rushdown flankers, try picking one of those champions. Now, how to deal with them? One way is picking Brawlers. These are the flanks that are made to duel people. They usually have some nice combat mobility. Lex has a dash to mess with your aim, Koga has 3 dashes, Zin has a dash that deals damage. On top of that, they tend to have some damage immunity skill, like Mojo's shield and Zin's below. On top of that, they tend to have a very easy to use weapon with high DPS or a high burst. And even though we could say the same about Andro, Lex has a weapon that is pretty much a straight up an upgrade to Andro's revolver. Unlike the rushdown champs that are designed to get close to their targets, everything in Brawlers kits is designed to tear their targets apart when they are next to you. These champions usually can out-damage the rapid fire damage champions, especially if they are getting the first shot off. And the last matchup is of course the way to counter the Brawlers, since they don't have any actual high mobility skill that allows them to flank from unexpected routes. Holding the routes that you expect them to come from can be a big problem for them. On top of that, Brawlers can deal with some consistent damage because they can spend time being immune and even deal some additional damage to those who dare shooting them in the wrong moment, like with counter or with Emoji's shield, but they still struggle against burst damage. If you have ever played a Xin against a good Shalin, you know how painful that can be. Every time he guesses where you're gonna come from, he just needs to hit one arrow to force you to retreat. And if you can't because your abilities are on cooldown or something, you're dead. A skilled Slugger player can exploit your Brawler pick pretty hard and turn the match into a cat and mouse game where you're the mouse all of a sudden. There are a few champions that are sort of exceptions and don't really fit too much into this scheme. Cassie and Lian are pretty special, maybe one day I'll make a video about them. Strix with his super busted flare and pistol is something that clearly gets outside of that box. And sometimes the best counter is in the group that should be countered by you. For example, so far Shalin is the best counter to Eevee, even though it's supposed to be vice versa. So keep in mind that some specific matchups are indeed exceptions. All of this of course depends on skill. Just picking the right champion is good, but you gotta know what you're doing. Which positions to take, which way to look and how to use your weapon properly. I hope this video makes sense to you and will help you think about counter picks more schematic. See ya guys next time.